You've probably heard these three letters everywhere in the business world: ESG. But what do they actually mean? Well, today, we're going to dig into the very first one, the E for environment. Let's break it down and see why it's totally changing the game for companies. And this really gets to the heart of the whole debate, doesn't it? Can a company actually do right by the planet and make more money at the same time? It's a huge question, so let's keep that in the back of our minds as we go through this.
All right, so to even start answering that, we've got to get back to basics. When people throw around the word environment in an ESG context, what are they really talking about?
It's actually way less complicated than you might think. At its core, the A is all about a company's relationship with nature. Simple as that. It's about their impact on the world around them. But what does nature really mean when you're a massive global company?
See, for a business, nature isn't some abstract idea. It's the real, tangible stuff they interact with every single day. We're talking about the air and the water they use, how much energy they're burning, what they do with their trash, and of course, the big one, their carbon emissions. These are the things that really count.
Okay, so why all the fuss? Why is the E in ESG such a huge deal right now? Well, it's because businesses are finding themselves on the front lines of some pretty massive global challenges. First up, the big one, climate change. It's kind of the backdrop for everything else we're going to talk about. And for any business out there, it creates huge risks, but also some surprising opportunities. And tied right into that is how much energy we all use. I mean, our entire economy runs on power, right? And for decades, that's meant burning a whole lot of fossil fuels, with companies being the #1 consumers. Then there's something we often overlook: water. It feels like it's everywhere, but for so many industries, everything from making computer chips to growing food, water shortages are becoming a serious, serious risk to their operations. And finally, it all comes down to what's left over: waste and carbon. Think about it. Everything a company makes or does creates some kind of byproduct. How they handle that, from their garbage to their emissions, is now a huge part of how we measure their performance. Okay, so that's the heavy stuff, the big challenges. But the whole point of the ESG conversation isn't just to list problems. It's about figuring out how companies can actually be part of the solution. And this leads to the million-dollar question, right? It's one thing to say, yeah, these are big problems. It's another thing entirely to figure out what a company can actually do to make a difference. Turns out, it really boils down to 4 main things. First, just be more efficient. Save energy. Second, switch to clean sources like solar or wind. Third, get smart about waste, maybe by recycling more or designing products differently. And last, actively help protect nature. That's pretty much the playbook, right? All right, that's the theory, but what does this look like in the real world? Let's make it concrete with a really simple case study so we can see how this all works. So when I say case, all I mean is a simple little story, an example that connects what a company does to these big ESG ideas we've been talking about. So imagine this. A company decides to put solar panels all over its factory roof. So step 1, it's making its own clean power. Step 2, that means it saves a ton of money on its electric bill. Step 3, it's cutting its carbon emissions. And what's the end result of all that? Step 4, it actually lowers its costs. So let's connect the dots. Why is this a perfect E action? Well, it's a total win-win. The company is protecting the environment and cutting pollution. Great. It's also saving resources. But here's the kicker. It's also making the business stronger and more sustainable in the long run. And that brings us all the way back around to where we started, to that big question that's been hanging in the air this whole time. We see how a company can do it, but does this really solve that old tension between nature and profit? For the longest time, everyone just assumed these two things were in conflict. You could do what's good for nature, or you could do what's good for business. You couldn't have both. But what if that's not true anymore? What if our solar panel example isn't the exception, but the new rule? Could it be that doing what's good for the planet is now the smartest thing a company can do for its bottom line? That is the powerful, game-changing idea at the very heart of the E in ESG.